I recognized anyone outside of you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's other people?
Yeah, and I remember because I was already so we had 4 original members. There was Holden Reviews, Gene, who was originally called X Disturbed Genes, and Tristan, the Glass Reflection. And I remember what started it was Tristan one day messaged me out the blue with the YouTube DMs, being like, "Hey, do you want to talk about this new anime season?" And this was before. This was before I'd even started watching seasonal anime. This was before the concept of, hey, you can watch anime weekly and be hyped for seasonal anime, you know?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you made a joke in one of your videos where it's like, why would I want to come over the space of 12 weeks when I can just come in one big go? That was a joke you made, and I remember that. For some reason,
I completely forgot about that joke.
That's an amazing joke.
For some reason, that stuck with me, and I was like, that's a great example. I would like to come in one go.
I think because I was thinking about my thought process, and my thought process is, why would I want a 12th of an orgasm when I could just have one orgasm in one session?
Yeah, right.
That's such a good joke. I love that.
Yeah, and so we made this podcast, which wasn't even a podcast. It was kind of just a recorded Skype call, and we didn't know where to put it. So I made the suggestion to put it on YouTube, because this was before, like, it was an audio podcast. It wasn't a visual podcast like this. So nobody thought that putting audio podcasts on YouTube would work. And I was just like, well, we're YouTubers, so why not why not put it on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. I don't like saying it like this because it kind of sounds like it's like sucking my own dick or whatever. But I'd say like PodTaku was a big factor in, you know, shaping the anime YouTube community
I think so.
of that time.
No, absolutely.
Well, 'cause I think it left as somebody who, you know, wasn't even interested in being an anime YouTuber. It definitely shaped, I think, how I felt about it. Because at the time I was listening to PodTaku, like every week, like I never wanted to be a YouTuber. It never even crossed my mind. But definitely when I got into it, I think a lot of the influences came from listening to that. So I think you may not have shaped the generation you were in, but you definitely helped shape the one that came after.
I mean, there's definitely, you know, a reason why, even to this day, people who were around in the anime YouTube
we get comments about it on
back
this,
then,
right?
Yeah, people back then still are like, yeah, remember PodTaku? Like even people who didn't watch PodTaku knew PodTaku.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a big point in my life. PodTaku really was it. I think back to PodTaku very fondly, even though it's like ended now and I've moved on in my life. It had a big part of shaping me as a person, and it's especially because PodTaku was the first ever friends I made that I could talk to anime with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That goes all the way back to the conversation we had at the start. But Holden and Gene were literally the first people I was able to bond over anime with. And PodTaku was kind of like my weekly, bi-weekly kind of session where I could just nerd over anime.
Just banter with your buddies, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And apparently a lot of people looked up to us back then because a lot of people apparently didn't also have friends to talk to anime with,
that's
right?
why I listen to it.
Yeah.
And so that really, I feel like that cemented the next era of anime YouTube before I think you came along. And I think that was kind of the era of YouTube where it was the last era where people could just make content without a monetary incentive in mind.
Right.
Because we did PodTaku not because we weren't getting paid for it at all.
Yeah.
For a lot of it, we basically made it because we just wanted to.
Passion project.
Yeah, it was a passion project. It was kind of like this, but back then this was before we had any kind of monetization.
Yeah.
We were just four mates who would just go on a Skype call and record the audio and just splice it together and upload it on YouTube.
And then I came in when the fat check starts rolling. I'm just kidding. No, but like, I don't think it's too much to say that, you know, this podcast included, there's a lot of anime podcasts now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Big and small. And I don't think it'd be too far to say that, you know, PodTaku is probably the one who probably got the train rolling in that side of attitude.
It kind of amazes me because like before this came along, before Trash Taste came along, you look back to some of the views and, you know, popularity of PodTaku, and it still basically holds up almost to a lot of the bigger podcasts that came after it. I mean, there's only a few podcasts that I can think of that came after PodTaku that
Anime related.
Yeah, anime related that were able to, you know, do better with it in terms of views and views and stuff. And PodTaku's like 6 years old now, so that kind of blows my mind. Do you want to hear a blast from the past?
Sure.
Warning: the following audio may contain coarse language and other material that may not be suitable for a younger audience. Viewer discretion is advised.
That is screaming. Dude, there's like maybe a couple of hundred people watching this right now who just cream their pants from nostalgia.
that intro is like ingrained in my mind, man.
That your accent warning is like, it's so 2012.
Also, we may spoil anything and everything. So you have been warned.
If you go to my channel, the very, very first video is like a podcast that looks very reminiscent of the editing style of another podcast.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
It looks very, very similar with the cubes flashing up between.
Oh, yeah.
talks.
Oh, yeah.
Because who did you edit all of them?
No. So originally it was basically between me and Tristan and Holden who had to edit most of the podcast.
Okay.
And so we basically edited the audio so they would sync up, and we would remove a lot of when you have calls on Skype,
People talking over each other.
Yeah, people talking over each other, and you have this really awkward pause where it's
you cut it all up smoother.
Yeah, exactly. And then we were like, we wanted to make it a bit more visual. So, but we couldn't just film ourselves next to each other. So we kind of just decided to go with flashing boxes.
Yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, and that was our way of just evolving the podcast. And I remember after PodTaku, we kind of added a few more people as well.
Right, I wanted to ask about that because as a viewer, I was so confused. There was just people towards the end would just start joining in, and I'm like, and then I was like PodTaku, and I'm like, what is going on with all of this?
Was Jimmy on the podcast?
Yeah,
as well?
Jimmy was on the podcast.
Right. People were it was so odd because it just seemed like people were just cycling in, and I was like, wait. This is not what I want. I wanted the boys.
I want the big four.
I want the big four back. Like as a viewer, I was so confused. I don't think you guys ever explain any of that, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'd be interested in knowing.
Well, for me, it was because the scheduling just got super hard. Because, like I said, we weren't getting paid for anything, so this was just us
making time,
making time, and we got to a point with PodTaku where we were having a fucking hard time keeping up with this 2-week schedule. So I wanted to, and it had been a while since PodTaku had started, so I wanted to spice things up. And I wanted to see if there was we could get some chemistry with other people. And that's when I brought on the idea of PodTaku and adding more people and making it a distinct brand of PodTaku's where we just talk about pure whatever we want to talk about. It's kind of like a free-flowing podcast. And PodTaku is we're going to pick a specific topic and we're going to stay on topic.
Right.
And that was the kind of idea of PodTaku. It kind of hit everything because it added some new elements to the podcast, and it also made it so less of a load was on the original 4 as well. But yeah, it's interesting to hear what you guys thought about it as a viewer perspective.
I think because I didn't watch every single one. And then I think I just saw 3 PodTakus and I was so confused. And then I watch it and I'm like, who are half of these people? Yeah. Know, it's so strange.
And I think what it really worked at first because PodTaku did his job, and then it got to the point when PodTaku kind of even maybe became the flagship series. Because if you look on the PodTaku channel, a lot of the most viewed videos ended up being PodTaku.
Oh, really?
PodTaku videos. Our most viewed video was one where we literally just talk about hentai.
Nice.
Of course.
And but that was back when talking about hentais are very hush hush. Nobody publicly liked hentai on Twitter or any shit like that.
Joey, allow me to introduce myself.
Hi.
But so PodTaku kind of became one of the flagship series because it just got more views, and the original 4 people, it just became harder and harder for us to schedule the original PodTaku podcast. And I think that's kind of what brought helped bring PodTaku to an end. Because I feel like that era of AniTube is defined by the start of PodTaku and the end of PodTaku. Because I think the end of PodTaku really, it coincidentally coincided with a lot of the times when Joey really rose and people realized they could do anime content for money as well.
Yeah.
Which just wasn't an idea before then.